In this episode of the podcast, we speak with Andrea, founder of ABURY, a fair trade lifestyle label based between Berlin and Marrakech. I was curious about talking with Andrea because I've known her for close to 10 years and I've enjoyed seeing her label and foundation grow and become more and more impactful with social programs connected to women's education, communities, and artisans. Additionally, I'm impressed by all the effort she put in this year to create a community of ethical fashion brands that share ideas and solutions with each other. On this episode, we will discuss fashion supply chains problem, the role of small companies and networks, and how to measure the social impact of businesses. Keep listening, there is a lot to be inspired by. Sustainability at Work is a podcast about sustainability in the workplace and in companies. My name is Samara and I've been working with sustainability for almost 10 years. Hello, good morning. Good morning, Andrea. Thank you for being here. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sustainability at Work. How are you?
I'm really happy to be here today with you. And despite the global issues that we all face, personally, I'm fine.
That's great. Thank you so much, Andrea, for being here. So, Andrea, I really wanted to have you in your double presence, both as ABURY, but also as a professional in communication. I really want to talk with you about sustainable fashion, and I think you have a great experience both with your company and with as a professional of communication. So I wanted to start by trying to make a picture of the problem. What are the main problems at the moment in traditional fashion? What do you see that are the biggest challenges, let's say?
Well, Samara, you start with a really big question because the fashion industry has many different angles of challenges regarding sustainability. First of all, the fashion industry is one of the biggest producers of CO2 emissions. And it's the same, all the flights and ships together is what the fashion industry does. So I think many people don't know or don't think about that of the fashion industry. But then apart from that, you have, regarding the ecological problems, you have water, because a lot of water is being used for producing garments, to grow cotton or even organic cotton, which needs even more water. So this is a huge problem. Where do we get the water from? One jeans can go up to 10,000 liters of water per pair. Then you have the thing with the chemicals for dyeing and all the things that are involved in treating and dyeing the garments. Then obviously also you have the plastic topic, and this is how we met actually. How can we recycle yarns or use recycled plastic to make yarns out of them? But then how can you recycle the recycled yarns when they end up in the landfill? You have the topic of waste. So many garments are not even worn. In average, a person wears a purchased garment 7 times. So if you imagine what that means, how many things are being bought and not even worn once, and then they end up in landfills because they cannot be recycled, because there are too many different yarns in one garment, so you cannot recycle them because they are interconnected. Well, I think this is kind of the main topics regarding ecology, really in a very short wrap up. But then you also have the social topics. like the workers, the exploitation of workers, the situations how they work, like workplaces, especially in developing countries. If you look at India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, where like workers work for very, very low money. They have to work 16 hours a day, 6 days a week. So also there are a lot of social issues, obviously, as well.
Mm-hmm. Which I think was the main driver for you with your company. And so tell me a little bit about your adventure, how it started, what ignited it, and how it has changed in the years, because you have worked with your company for a long time now.
Yeah, it's now 10 years, actually, almost, 9 years. And so it started when I moved to Marrakech, and we renovated a house and worked with traditional artisans. But then diving into the world of artisans, I was really fascinated by their skills, but at the same time, kind of shocked how they, number one, lost a lot of their skills because of modern ways of production, because people always wanted to have cheap, and artisanal is long times. So you have to kind of, because you work with your hands, it takes more time, and it's obviously more expensive. So a lot of these traditions got lost. And at the same time, also, you see that they compromise traditions for fast production, like also using worse chemicals and these kind of things, where they kind of destroy their own environment where they live in without sometimes even knowing. So and that was my motivation. I thought, hey, it's really unfair that these people have these amazing skills and they cannot actually earn a fair living. So this is how we started connecting artisans with designers, and actually developed workshops in helping them to improve the design quality but also the quality of the product, so that it can compete on an international market and also achieve a price that is fair.
And how it has changed in these 10 years, because now you're working also with women. There is we will talk also more about this, but the journey has been super long, and you have changed a lot the business.
Yeah, actually, thank you for asking that, because ABURY is set up as a social business. So apart from doing like the normal fashion stuff, we at the same time started a foundation, and we reinvest 50% of the profits in community projects in the community we also work with. So which means literacy programs, or sometimes also we buy better material, like machines that they can have looms to do better quality, like these kind of things. And we focus on women and female artisans. And how it has developed. One thing I want to also add: we started with vintage leather bags. So, but also looking at that, so at the beginning we had like 100% leather collection. But obviously, as probably many people know, leather is not the most sustainable material, because you need a lot of chemicals to treat it. And although we have achieved like using leather that has been treated in a more sustainable way, the goal is to actually work more and more with other materials. So our latest collection, for example, we did in Malaysia, and it's an upcycling project. So we work together with an evening dress designer from Malaysia who has high-end textile waste. like sweat and other and silk and other stuff, and then he gives that to us, and our sewers, women from the community, they make little cocktail bags out of it. So this is kind of the journey a little bit.
And so now you're working in Morocco, and then Malaysia and other places, or mostly there?
Yeah. Now we also work in Ethiopia and in Ecuador. Mm-hmm. And we have a cooperation partner in Tanzania. These are kind of our 5 biggest like countries we work with.
Mm-hmm. So what did you learn in these 10 years about how fashion can address the problems that we talk about in the beginning? Is it an easy task? Is it difficult? Is it possible to control the supply chain? Because that is the big challenge. If even sustainable brands, like, for example, this is in the food industry, but Tony Chocolonely, recently, they're very much focused on child labor, and they discovered they had some child in the supply chain, and they just realized and they fixed it. But they are so much focused, and they weren't able to avoid it. So the supply chain is really hard to control, especially in an industry like the fashion one, which has a long supply chain. How do you do that?
Absolutely. It is not an easy task. And number one, I realized that it takes much more time than I thought. At the beginning, obviously, you're like super motivated and you think like, okay, in 3 years, I'll change the fashion industry. Now, 10 years later, I know we probably need another 10 years, 20 years to be better and better. And I think you'll never reach the 100% because it's almost, it's very difficult. But having said that, what is important to us is that we visit the communities we work with. So obviously, if you grow and you grow quick, then it's more and more difficult. But in our stage, it's still possible. It's not always me, but we have a circle of people we trust that really go and see and work with the people on site. Then second, regarding supply chain, this is a compromise that we do. And I know it's very difficult for other fashion companies, but we only use materials that we can source in the country we work with. Mm-hmm. So we don't want to kind of ship things all around the world 10 times because we have the zipper from here and the buttons from there. So we really try to keep production in one place. Which means sometimes, for example, in Morocco, because they don't have any high-end zippers, we find alternative solution of closures. But I see that for big companies, that might be really a big task if you have like 3-4 tier suppliers that go deeper and deeper that you cannot control anymore, that your supplier has a supplier and the supplier has a supplier, you know what I mean? So that's one topic to kind of see how you can actually shorten your supply chain to have more control. I think that's the difference in our approach. Mm-hmm. What we are still working on is obviously because we produce in developing countries, we have to ship. We have to ship things from Ecuador and from Ethiopia, which makes the big CO2 footprint as well. So we always try to cooperate with other brands from that area that have a shipment so that we combine a shipment so that we have like one bigger package or transport. So that's like the compromise we always try to do.
Mm-hmm. So you know a lot about, especially the social sustainability of a supply chain. So how do you personally, when you go around and shopping, how do you value if a product is really sustainable for what you can do, of course, because there is a limitation to what you can understand. But how do you measure sustainability in your own purchase? How do you see if a product, is there any check that you do or something that you consider?
What I really love to do is like look at their websites and see if the brands tell their story and show some pictures or even videos where you can see what they do. Obviously, also here you can manipulate, but I really believe that especially small brands like us, I know so many who really try hard and do their best. And a lot of people are looking for certificates. So they want me to tell them, hey, like, is it the Blue Angel or the Green Circle, or like, what do I have to look for? The problem is that especially for small brands who are sustainable and really look after everything, they cannot afford having a certification because they are really expensive. And so there, it's not the certification I think you should look for. It's rather try to see if there are persons behind. Do they show the founder on the website? Is there a person who stands with their name? Or like, do they explain their sustainability practices on the website? Does it sound, good for you? Yeah, so I think that's the best advice I could give. And really, I strongly believe in supporting the small brands because no matter what, and I really also appreciate the efforts that all the big companies do, and it's very, very important that they also change because they have a huge impact. But still, it's very small. You know, at H&M, it's like 10% maximum of their whole collection that is like the green collection or sustainable collection. And and with the fast fashion part, they finance the sustainable part. So I would always recommend to look for the hidden champions.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And also about the certification, I think it's an interesting point. I heard that there is a country, I don't remember if it was the UK or some northern country, I don't remember, that they passed a legislation where you cannot claim to be sustainable if you don't have a certain kind of certification. And I was thinking exactly what you said, small business are going to have a hard time. And so what happens in that case is that a small business cannot say anymore that they're sustainable or they produce sustainable product, and the big one can. So yes, this is a huge problem, I guess. So you mentioned somehow the idea of creating stories around the product. And I see that on your website is something that you do a lot. Is that working? Are there any other strategies to communicate all the story that is behind every product?
Yeah, that's a good question too. Like, I think the people who are really committed and who are searching for the difference in the product and sustainable products, they are looking at the stories behind. So what I see, it's still a small percentage. You can see the clicks on the website, but I think it's worth putting in the effort, and also, well, you have to see how you can package the stories. So how can you package the story in an Insta post, for example, that people also in a short amount of time understand what you want to say? So what I see is that at the beginning, we were a little bit overloading our customer with too many things, like parts of information in one message. So we try to tell them that we're upcycling and we're helping women and we have like this literacy project. At the same time, we pay fair. And obviously at a certain time, our customer was kind of, okay, that's too much. So what we learned over time is kind of package the information, and you don't have to tell everything in one story. You can have different stories and then focus on one point that you want to make. And that's one learning that that we had.
Mm-hmm. And I think another strong point when you look at your website is, which I loved, it's the idea of a network. I saw that you have these fab talks. Can you tell us a little bit about that and about, in a way, the power of creating a strong network of small business who can exchange overall knowledge and solution, I guess?
Yeah. Well, our claim is together we make it fashionable to care. And I think that says is more or less. I really believe that we cannot make it by ourselves. So we have to have this network to learn from each other, to support each other. And this is the idea behind the Fab Talks as well, is kind of, we do, well, before COVID, we did it in the real world. Now, since then, we have like digital talks, but we invite other people kind of from the industry or outside the industry, sometimes even kind of what you would call competitors, to talk about topics, and we discuss and we try to share insights, opinions, tips, how to make it better. Because we believe if we have made, for example, a mistake, or if we have learned something, why not share? And support others to make it quicker. And this is one of the ideas behind the Fab Talks and the other network efforts that we do. I think one good, really good example for that as well is B Corp. We are also certified, it's a certification, certified B Corp, but I think they are still affordable, although you have to pay a bit. But and it's a great network of brands all over the world, and we do a lot of cooperations on Instagram, raffles. We did a Christmas market here in Berlin with B Corp brands from all over the world. So there's a lot of support for each other.
Mm-hmm. Which is great. And there's one thing which every time I talk about sustainability in the social part, how do you measure sustainability in the social? Because we are quite good now measuring sustainability in the environmental area because we have data, we can control everything. Which doesn't really mean that we can control everything. But anyway, but in the social, it's much more difficult. But in our world, what you cannot measure, you cannot say. So, and it kind of stays out from the conversation if you cannot measure. And so I think that's a huge challenge in environment in social sustainability.
It's absolutely still a big challenge. What we did in like the village we work with, we did kind of a zero measurement, how many women did have an education, how many women did know how to read and write. And then we look 5 years later, okay, how many women now know how to read and write? That was like the quantitative thing, but then we also did some qualitative interviews, asking them, now what do you do that with your knowledge? Was there any change in your life, or do you now read and write but it doesn't make any difference, you know? And from this we took some consequences in our doing for the next years. Still, to be very, very honest, you don't know what happens in 10 years, because maybe they raise their kids differently, because now they know how to read and write and they can actually follow their children. And maybe that helps the children as well to get a better education. So to follow up with these things really difficult. It's a much more longer term impact that you have in the social thing than in the ecological part. Well, you use less water, and 2 days later you see, oh, I've used less water. But in the social world, impact comes kind of in different time frames. That's what I at least learned. And then the second thing is, you never know if that could also have negative impact. To be honest, now all the women let's just imagine, all the women learn how to read and write. They start their own business. They get independent. They see, oh, I don't need my husband anymore. They start the same thing that we do, and now they have less children. And I don't know. That's just it's difficult. But we try to find some measurements that we think could be KPIs that are worth measuring.
Mm-hmm. No, and that's I think it's great, because anyway, even if the numbers are not changing, you're still learning something, and you can try to adapt and see if the adaptation works. Because I agree with you, it's a long term, but I think it could be even more powerful than you think, as you did the example of women being able to follow the study of their kids, and that's powerful. I mean, that's really changing an entire family.
What we already learned now in the last 10 years is that like after 5 years, when we interviewed the women and we asked them what has changed in their lives through reading and writing, the first thing was they could read the prescriptions for and all the things, like with the doctors for their children, like when they are ill, and now they know how to treat them and they understand better how that works. And then the next thing I was asking, but what's the impact like for yourself? Do you start a different life or so on? And yeah, she's a little bit more independent because she can read street signs and stuff. But they didn't develop a vision for their life, like to change their life. Because when they were like children and they were raised as girls, they have never learned that they are actually allowed to have a vision for their life. But what is now changing is that when I ask them, what is your vision for your son or daughter? There is no difference. They have the vision, they will become teachers, doctors, lawyers, like the sky is the limit. And this is what they tell their children and also their daughters. And that makes the difference, because their mothers, they have told them, well, you will be a housewife and you have to look for your husband and you have to get the water and the wood. And now these women who went to our school, they tell their children, well, if you know how to read and write, then you can become a lawyer, then you can become a doctor. And that will make the difference in the next generation. Mm-hmm. That's what I believe.
Yeah, and that's really powerful, I think. Last question that I wanted to know, you started already a little bit, but are there some stories that really got to you in these 10 years of people, really individuals, a nice story of change? Really, you already shared this one, which I think was powerful, but do you have any other?
I have a nice story of change for myself as well, because we always talk about the change that we kind of bring to the people, but actually what happens is that we change a lot as well in the process, which is the good thing. And so that was actually early in the process, after like 1 or 2 years, and I had a meeting with the head of the village, and it was about, okay, now we want to build a school. So we needed his agreement that we could use that area. And then we discussed and I had a translator. And finally he said, yeah, okay, you convinced me, we'll do it. And he gave me his hand. So I took the hand, we did a handshake. And then I said, okay, so now let's develop the contract. And then the translator was like, And then the man said, you know, my hand is the most valuable thing I have. And if this is not good enough for you, then we cannot work together. And I think that's so amazing, like the trust that also this person brought towards me, you know. And then we actually from that started to build this this trusting environment where we, since 10 years, we never had a contract. Now you can call me naive, but I think it's really something that we should all strive for, to be more, working in more trustful environments, even in our companies, like recognition, trust, leadership. I think that's something super important. So like this man inspired me to create like my own way of leadership. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think that's for me like what was the most powerful story for me. Yeah.
It is really powerful because there's trust, but there's always like remembering what has a value and what not. I really like that sentence about my hand is the most valuable thing. And and then you realize we value a piece of paper more than the hand of a person.
Yes, absolutely.
So it doesn't make sense. And so, yeah, so it's also rethinking back the value of things and remembering.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great story. Thank you so much, Andrea.
Thank you, Samara.
We finished our time, but I'm really happy that you were here for these episodes. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And I hope to hear from you soon and to follow your project. Thank you so much, Andrea.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.